Hi, I'm Kevin, and this is Novel to You, a place where I read novels, my novels, and you can listen to them while you're washing the dog, washing the car, washing the dishes, whatever. It's usually 25 minutes, depending on the chapter length, and we're reading a novel today called Taemane, which is a continuation from the last episode, and we're on chapter 11. It's a romance. Kind of a gritty romance, but it's a romance. I hope you enjoy it. Taemane. Alex sat at a plain table to the left of the door. He had a large spread of papers, and though his workspace had no identity as a personal desk, the morass of ledgers formed a virtual castle. He had immersed himself in the production records of the mine and was completely at home with his new responsibilities, though he avoided Claire. Even during the simplest of conversations with her, he found a way to be absent, to avoid confrontation. His shirt was white, and Mary made it her priority to make sure it was washed and starched. It chafed constantly at his neck. He glanced up at Claire, who strutted across the office. Over the years, Claire had taken a major role in the running of the mine and was more than competent in her activities, often forcing her way on unlucky recipients on the two-way radio. Alex didn't know what to expect from the invitation to work in the office, and he'd been wary of his position from the moment he entered. He had been in the office hundreds of times, but never with any kind of management responsibility. Mr. Ostenstadt had anticipated the awkwardness and had arranged several duties for him. The first 10 days, Alex had to establish a routine of mine production reports throughout the day to ensure that each shift was surfacing an equal amount of blue soil. It was Claire's idea, and with input from Alex, the old man had devised a very good check system. It seemed to be working well, but needed some kind of history to work from, so Alex had to establish some general levels from the previous year. He had asked for a few weeks to prepare it and was hoping to make a graph presentation to them to show his real capabilities. With the twice-daily report trips into the mine and all the records to plow through, Alex was working longer hours than when he was actually down in the mine. At the end of each day, his mother grilled him on his activities. She was thrilled to see him out of the mine. Mary always asked about his position in the office and how Claire was treating him. After being questioned by his mother, he usually had the same routine with Kate, who had started to help teach at the church. The trip down to the church was a private time they could share together. He chose to say little about Claire. It was a hurdle he would have to overcome. He was sure there would come an opportunity to prove himself to her. Alex enjoyed Mr. Ostenstadt's company. The rugged old man would relax when Claire was not around, and often made little jokes, and would always try to involve Alex or ask for ideas. Alex's rescheduling of shift times had made the old man extremely happy. They got on well, like when Alex was a boy. In fact, he would often interrupt Alex to chat about the miners' conditions and, of course, football. Though hardened over the years, Alex still thought Carl Ostenstadt was an approachable, kind man. Alex remembered how important the construction of the football nets and the pitch in the compound were to him. Years ago, he had organized a team of 6 miners to work for 2 weeks straight, building the nets and leveling the pitch. When one of the corners was not completely square, he left the office and had spent the entire day working with men to get it right. Alex and Kate, being younger, had tagged along trying to help, and they all got caught up in the excitement. They were small then, 8 or 9, and Claire was away at school. On another afternoon, Mr. Ostenstadt had sat on the steps to the house and explained to Alex all the rules and the teams in England, Spain, and Italy. He knew so much about football in Europe, and had even passed on some old newspaper clippings to Alex. They were still in Alex's room, taped to the wall. Dreams he'd had as a child. The pitch was just dirt, but it was free of scrub and rocks. 6 or 8 years ago, the games and tournaments at the Ostenstadt mine organized were known among the entire industry, or so Alex thought. Since the old man's health had begun to deteriorate, though, he wasn't involved much anymore, and he struggled to even see 5 or 6 games a year. These days, most of the games were just among the company miners. No outside clubs seemed to come around anymore, which was sad. It was a result of the conditions at the other mines. Life was more brutal for workers at other facilities. Claire had just finished weighing a small portion of diamonds. She tossed the pouch of diamonds aggressively in front of her father. They were having a heated disagreement. It had to do with the quality of the diamonds, but it was not a topic that Alex understood. The old man coughed, and Alex got up quickly and took some water across to him. He waved a thank you. An arrogant flick of Claire's head sent Alex back to his table. It was an unpleasant and completely unnecessary action. The old man was about to tell her off when the front door opened and Kate came through with a tray. She immediately looked around for Alex. Claire saw her and snapped, "Why are you here? What do you want?" "Civil, for God's sake," the old man said. "No wonder no one'll what?" Claire glared at him, challenging him to finish the sentence. "Oh, nothing. Your mother used to say, pleasantness is like the wind, not water. It doesn't evaporate, and it can flow around us, always. Think on that, Claire." He waved her off. Claire turned away and strutted across the office to place the diamonds in the open safe. She closed the heavy door of the black and gold safe, then spun the dial on the lock. "So, Katie, what brings you down here away from your studies? You know you have to finish that work to graduate." I know, Father." She glanced across to Alex. It was obvious the old man had not changed since childhood. "I thought I would just have to, save Mary the trip down and bring your lunches. Thursday is always such a busy day." "How would you know?" The old man raised his head in exasperation. Kate just walked toward the desk. "Oh, you don't want yours then? That's fine." She set the tray down on her father's desk and took a separately wrapped package across to Alex. I brought something for you as well, Alex." She presented him with the carefully wrapped package. He accepted it with a huge smile. Thanks. That was, He trailed off, not sure what to say. He opened the package. There was a note inside, which he adeptly hid and moved the sandwich to one side. It lacked the same fresh wholesomeness of the others on the tray in front of her father. It was definitely not as appealing as those made by Mary. Carl came across and picked the sandwich up. He raised the sandwich to the light, pretending to examine the specimen closely. He playfully shook his head. It looks like she made it, Alex. It may not be safe to eat." He put it down. She slapped her father's shoulder. "Dad!" "Well, it's certainly better than nothing. Thank you." The thank you had a totally different meaning, and Claire seized on the opportunity to break it up. "Nothing is what you'll be paid if you start taking lunch breaks at any time that pleases you." Kate crossed in front of her as Alex rewrapped the sandwich. "Why are you so unpleasant? To everyone. Though bitchiness comes easy to you, it doesn't really help you. Do you know that? You never used to be a bitch. Why did you change?" "Kate, you shouldn't speak like that." Carl wanted to get control of the situation before it blew up in front of Alex, whom he saw as a friend and didn't want to see embarrassed or belittled by his arrogant older daughter. He drew the two girls by their elbows across the room, away from Alex. "But it's what she understands, Dad." "You and your little black..." Carl grabbed the skinny woman's jaw and squeezed it hard. "Claire, for God's sake, shut up!" He released her and his finger thrust tight in front of her face. "Alex has already saved us a huge amount of money in labor rescheduling. His production charts are showing me ways to rethink everything. In 2 weeks, he has become invaluable. Claire, this is simple. I suggest you either belt up or find somewhere else to be during the day. Do I make myself clear?" There were no tears in her eyes from the reprisal, only a bitter glare directed to Kate and then at Alex. Humiliated, she turned away from them, grabbed several folders of papers from her desk, and stormed out. strutting up toward the house. Alex stood wondering if there was anything he could do, but the old man waved him down to his seat. "It's all right. She's just too much of a hothead, like me when I was younger. I'll go. Katie, why don't you keep Alex company? Make sure he survives your sandwiches." He laughed at his little joke, but it finished in a cough. "Alex, you finish those charts up for the last 6 months and show me them tomorrow after you oversee the shift change. Maybe we can share a drink as a little celebration, if you have time before your class at the church." Alex nodded a simple yes. He turned to Katie. "Would you join us too, Katie? That is, if you won't be going to the teaching too." Kate's eyes swelled and then looked down as she blushed at her father's knowledge of their secret trips together. But the idea of her father accepting Alex and her together in any way would be fantastic. She tried to contain herself, but nodded too eagerly. The old man smiled wryly. I'll bet you'll make it. You're as easy to read as your mother. Well, off to tame the tiger." He coughed again and headed out the door to track down Claire. Kate closed the door behind him and came around the table. She snatched the pencil from Alex's hand, tossed it on the table, and kissed him. She pressed herself full and tight against him. Chapter 12. The following afternoon, it was almost 1, and Kate rattled the pencil aimlessly between her teeth. She gazed out the window. The mine was busy, and she had an excellent view of the comings and goings of the main mine building from her bedroom window. Her writing was not going well. She was too distracted by thoughts of Alex. The office door opened, and she saw him step out to meet another worker, who looked like his cousin Asaf. She liked Asaf and his wife Jamina. Twice since she returned from boarding school, she got George to take her and Mary over to the village where Jamina lived and would have tea with her. She knew Asaf was always silly and would often make fun of Alex and behave stupidly too. From her window, she saw Alex stop halfway down the steps when her father said something to him from the office. Alex sprung back up the steps and leaned through the doorway. The old man appeared, smiling from the office, with one hand on Alex's shoulder. He had a crumpled ball of paper in his other hand. He slapped Alex lightly on the back and tossed the paper ball at Asaf, waiting on the ground below. Asaf bounced the ball on his chest, then with his hands, without his hands, and then juggled it several times with his feet before dropping it. Her father said something to Alex about Asaf, and all 3 men laughed. Alex descended the steps, and the 2 young men headed off toward the elevator. Kate watched as a coughing fit racked the old man's body, forcing him to briefly hold the railing. Once it had passed, he re-entered the office. Kate turned her gaze and watched Alex and Asaf. Alex, in his khaki shorts and white shirt, stood out among the large number of miners gathered around the entrance. It was the half-day shift change at the end of a 3-week stint, and they were all happy to be going home. It was a payday for the miners. Alex carried a clean helmet in his hand and joked with several miners as he made his way to the elevator. Kate leaned heavily on her palm as she gazed through the window. Her man was popular with everyone. She turned away from the window and looked around the room. It was very feminine, with lace pillows and a draped gauze tied above her bed. The bed had a fine silk cover. To one side there was a vanity with several bottles. Everything in her room was neatly presented and organized, except for her writing desk. Her studies and various papers littered the desk. It was as if the one thing that should draw the most focus was as confused as her thoughts and hopes for her and Alex. The small valise, still full of Alex's letters, was open on her bed. She'd been reading his letters rather than studying. A bored and impatient sigh slithered from her. Dissatisfied with her studies, an idea crossed her mind. She changed to trousers, pulled on a pair of high leather boots, then picked up a notebook and headed out the door. The 2-mile walk passed in a flash, and Kate soon found herself approaching the 4 wooden steps of the Dutch Reformed Church. The whitewash glared in the midday sun. The darkened thatch was like a well-combed toupee. The building appeared much like Father Stanley, squat and quaint, always welcoming and orderly. Nothing seemed to put the church or its little minister off balance. Inside, the open beam ceiling kept the air cool. Kate strolled down the aisle toward the altar, lost in thought. She traced the edge of each dark pew with her fingers. It was the same color as Alex's skin. The light squeak of her boots on the floor was the only disturbance in the sleeping church. The one-room building was deserted. She stopped in front of the polished wooden altar. Her mind drifted to a wedding dress. She had flowers in her hair, the same ones he gave her when she first returned. She carried a bouquet of them as well. Kate could see her hand covered in a lace sleeve reach out on his. Her dainty hand caressed his, and they made their oaths on the Bible. She stroked the back of his hand. It was strong, like the love in his heart. She heard someone nearby and lowered her outstretched arm. Her eyes darted around the single room and tried to find the source of the scrubbing noise. A movement caught her eye, and she spotted Father Stanley's butt sticking out from behind the pulpit. He was on his hands and knees, polishing. "Excuse me, Father." Father Stanley peered out and smiled broadly at the pretty young woman. He had known she was there, but there had been no need to interrupt her thoughts. The rag in his hand was tossed to the floor as he got to his feet. He was a short, barrel-chested man with small, wire-rimmed glasses and no visible neck. With khaki shorts over his white, toothpicked legs, a black shirt, and his sleeves rolled up, he looked dramatically different out of his vestments. A practical, devoted man in his late 40s, he carried a lot of respect among both blacks and whites. He had arrived as a young missionary 28 years ago. He liked the area and fought hard to establish and maintain the church. His efforts to purvey faith and schooling for youngsters in the area was unparalleled. He labored not only for his faith, but for the betterment of all those in the area. "Well, Kate, what a surprise. Why aren't you at home writing the thesis paper? You know, you won't graduate." "Oh, not you too. Between you, Father, and Alex, it could be your paper." "Oh, sorry. Hit a dead spot, have you?" "I can't concentrate. I'm nearly finished, but, well, sometimes I find if I talk things out, I can apply myself better." "Oh, I don't know." He moved to the front pew and sat. He waited, watching the young woman twist in her thoughts. Kate slipped over and sat beside him on the pew. She stared ahead at the altar, where she could still see herself in her dress. Father Stanley waited a minute, and then, hoping to break the awkwardness, he caught her attention. "It's funny. Alex was in here yesterday afternoon, asking some ridiculously basic math questions. I mean, he really is a whiz, way past me. I even put him in for an introductory studies program at the university level for him. Why he was drilling me was baffling." He hesitated slightly, but she was still adrift. "I remember when he was trying to learn to read, he was so determined, so desperate." He paused to see if there was an opening she would like to pursue, but she just fiddled with her book and stroked the back of the hand resting on it. "We talked for a few hours and never got around to answering the questions. Yet he seemed to leave happy." Funny that. "So, Kate, what is blocking you?" "Oh, I just keep thinking about someone and it's getting in the way." "This getting in the way, is it a good thing or a bad thing? Something you want?" Kate gushed her answer. "It's good. Oh, yes. I don't know if it's all right. If it's, I don't want it to. And then if you well, you know." She paused, realizing she was making no sense. She drew a slow, pensive breath, trying to focus her thoughts. She turned to face the round, bespectacled clergyman. His skin was so pale, his cheeks looked like creamy gourds, so unlike her man. "Father, how can you tell when you are truly in love?" "Well, Katie, can love ever be contained, hidden in a jar?" Her hazel eyes focused toward the stained glass window above the altar, but they didn't really see it. "Well, Katie, yesterday I was asked what is right and permissible in love. I told him." "Him? It was a him? I mean, he was a him?" She didn't even notice her mistake, so intrigued was she by the thought it could have been Alex. "Yes, Katie," he smiled at the distracted young woman. "It was a him. I told him that in true love there is no right or wrong, only the giving of loving kindness." She repeated it in a whisper. "The giving of loving kindness. Oh, thank you, Father." Kate stood and absently turned to leave. Father Stanley picked up his rag and called across to her. "Well, I hope I was some help. Give my best to your family, Mary and Alex." At the sound of Alex's name, she turned back to him and a blush burned across her face. "Yes, Father. Thank you." She walked out, leaving him to polish his pulpit. That's the end of it for today. That's as far as we go. We'll start chapter 14 on the next episode. Hope you enjoyed it. Remember, we're reading from Taemane. You can get it on Amazon or from my website. Details down below. Thanks for listening. See you next time.